What parenting trick actually messes up children? I found that when my parents teased me about stuff I was clearly uncomfortable with, it made me tell them less later in life. I have a good relationship with my parents, but I don't tell them lots about my life because it's easier if they don't know/tease about it. Never saying sorry to your kids. My mom only just recently started telling me sorry when she gets worked up. It's built up such a resentment for her over the years, and I also have trouble saying sorry myself because of it. Tell your kids sorry, especially if you overreact to something they did. I feel like most of these responses fall under seemingly harmful. A seemingly harmless mistake is rewarding your child with something when they do something they already enjoy. Take, for example, reading. If a child just enjoys reading, let the child read without giving any reward. Once you start rewarding the child for that act, their intrinsic motivation gets replaced. It's called the over-justification effect. Don't smother your kids. My mom quit having her own life the moment my brother and I were born. She was an incredibly devoted and loving mother, was very kind to us, but when we were born she stopped having friends, did not work, and was home every single day from when I was born to when I moved out in my early 20s. She was very easy to upset because she had no other source of self-esteem, and any time I screwed up, and I screwed up a lot, it was as if I had levied a very personal attack against her. In the last 5 years or so, before I left, I don't think we had a single conversation that didn't drive her to tears, and I promise I wasn't that bad. I constantly felt cornered and stressed, and fell into depression as a defense mechanism, and she took my resulting lack of performance very personally, creating a very treacherous cycle that was only broken when I enlisted and finally got away. To this day I often feel like I'm a bad person who failed to live up to her love. Not creating a safe space for your kids to tell their secrets and make mistakes. When I was younger, I excitedly confided in my mom about my first boyfriend. But instead of calmly talking me through this, she immediately brought my dad in the conversation, and they both yelled at me and forced me to break up with him. Well, realistically, it'd be a helicopter parent. You always want to look out for your kid, right? Make sure they're not doing things they're supposed to do. Walking without knocking. It ruins a relationship with a kid, because even though you have a sense of privacy, the kid doesn't and will always paranoid of anyone entering their room without warning. It ruins a kid. Would my mom let me do this? Is she okay with it? My parents were helicopter parents. I was not allowed to lock my bedroom door. My mom listened in on my phone calls. This was in landline phone days, and went through my personal belongings when I wasn't home, including reading the notes that friends and I passed in school. I wasn't allowed to talk to boys or date. I'm female. Doing this only prevents your children from learning how to form healthy relationships. You should teach your children how to do things, such as date, in a safe and responsible manner, rather than ban it. Mocking them. Laughing at them. Adults do it to each other all the time, but kids who haven't been immersed in the background cruelty of our culture for years don't understand that it's just the language of the land, and not that they themselves are particularly unworthy of respect. I got laughed at and mocked a few times as a kid, and that shit hurts a lot. There was one time I was trying to help a friend at their birthday by taking their presents to them, but all the adults and my parents thought I was being selfish and wanted them for myself, and joked and laughed at me and just ignored me explaining myself and carried on. I think that hurt my self-esteem a lot in the long run. I work with children who are victims of physical and sexual abuse. The worst part, aside from the obvious, is when the child has no support from family members. It's sadly more common for the non-offending parent to not believe the child or to try and quiet the abuse than for the parent to stand behind their child 100%. It's all too common that I get a case where dad is sexually assaulting his 8-year-old daughter and mom isn't sure she believes it's happening, but it's very obvious that this abuse is definitely occurring based on what the kid says and the details she can provide about the abuse that a kid who hasn't been abused would never be able to provide. Parents, please always believe your children if these allegations ever come about. It's so sad when a child comes in to talk about the abuse, but they tear up saying mommy said she doesn't believe me. It's so unfair. Makes me hate some of these parents more than the abuser. Abusing them. I was that kid, severely abused by my mother. Beaten to the point of teeth being knocked out. Car keys stuck in the back of my head. Being forced to lay completely flat at night with my face in the pillow suffocating almost. That's just a small percent of that. Now as an adult, and married with a child, I'm far from a normal individual. I have PTSD, trust issues, commitment issues, life skills are lacking, but I'm figuring it out still. But one thing I do know, is my daughter won't go through what I did at her age. No one should have, and if you know of a child that is abused, please call CPS. I wish someone had for me 25 years ago. Giving into your kids' wants and desires without upholding discipline and consequences will give your kids a large uphill battle to climb later. I say this BC my parents babied me a lot when I was young. I never had to do anything I didn't want to do. When I started getting bad grades BC I wasn't doing my homework, my parents would have conferences with my teachers so they could give me extra credit. I had a rude awakening in college when I realized how hard life is. I 100% love and adore my parents. And who's to say, if they did discipline me more that I'd have turned out any different? Probably not, but you never know. But when I have kids I already know a few things I'd do differently. Pretty much telling you that whatever activity that you enjoy doing is annoying or dumb. I used to love to sing. I was in chorus and would play my favorite songs over and over to learn the words. Not only did my sisters tease me for it, but my parents told me to shut up constantly. So I stopped singing. I must have been terrible, right? I sing when I'm alone, or jokingly with some friends. What really broke me was when I went to visit everyone for the holidays and my sister said that she was surprised I never pursued singing since I seemed to love it so much when I was younger. I nearly started crying and had to bite my tongue so I wouldn't scream at her for being one of the reasons I stopped. It's always funny for the ones doing the teasing, but it actually hurts the ones being teased, especially when it's coming from people who are supposed to love you. When I was 4 my parents adopted a kitten. Of course I had never seen anything quite so delightful before, and I could barely keep my hands off the little fur ball. So about 2 or 3 days passed. I get up in the morning and walk out and ask where is the kitten? And my parents told me that he died, implying that my roughhousing had killed it. I was terrified to touch an animal for several years thereafter. In fact they had simply given the kitten back to the people they got it from. Treating crying as if it's something only weak people do. My dad in particular used to yell at me for crying, which only made me cry more, which made him yell more, and you get the point. In high school I tried to bring up the possibility of me having anxiety problems that I'd spoken to the school counselor about because my friends made me go since they were worried. He told me I was just a drama queen. I can't express that I'm anxious or stressed around my dad because others have it worse. Even now I'm 21 and seeing a psychiatrist in a couple weeks because I've just felt so bad lately and I would never let my dad know. I think I'd rather die than my dad know I've been seeing a psychiatrist and discussing the possibility of me having OCD with said psychiatrist, which does explain a lot and is actually kind of comforting for me to know because he'd get so mad at me for being weak. Not having them do chores. My parents pushed me to be academic, so doted on me hand and foot as a kid to make more room for study. When you're too young and stupid to know any better you think it's a blessing. When I moved out to uni I didn't really know how to clean, when to clean, what to clean with, how to wash clothes, how to get them dry etc. The only thing I could do is cook and binge drink. That's no way to bring up a kid, and it's a steep learning curve doing all that stuff for the first time in your early 20s. It sounds like a super lame answer, but make sure every kid does their fair share of chores. Saying I don't care who started it. I grew up with friends whose siblings would target the one with the bad temper, provoke them into a rage, then cry and play victim when they got slapped. In this case, it does matter who started it. A parent has to make it clear that violence isn't okay, but neither is provoking someone into said violence. It doesn't matter that said person never hit or kicked while their sibling did. They never would have gotten hurt in the first place if they didn't encourage the aggression to begin with. Children are clever and will find loopholes in their parents' rules. Parents need to be better and snuff out that kind of BS when it starts. If they don't, they'll raise a manipulator and a scapegoat. One will use them and one will resent them. It's a lose-lose all because of a simple rule. This is serious. I carry deep regrets over this. My kids were really wounded by my failing to properly memorialize the deaths of their sisters. We had 2 normal kids. Then my wife was pregnant and gave birth to 2 babies as a very late term miscarriage. I held them and they were small babies. Charity's birthday is in 2 days. Hannah was born October 10th. We thought we did all the right things. We took their cremains and with our children, put one into the sea and another into a friend's lake. We talked about the loss occasionally, but we didn't do a lot of things we could have done. Memorialize their birthdays, Christmas ornaments for them, that sort of tangible stuff that kids can grasp. As it turns out, both of them grieved those losses deeply. They were 4 and 5, and we thought they barely understood it. But we were wrong. And it really wounded them, and they exploded with anger and hurt at us a couple of years ago. We handled it well. We got counseling. We apologized. We started correcting course. Right now, neither of them really speak to us. They cannot seem to forgive us for that oversight of not properly memorializing their sisters. And it's tearing us apart. We were so close. And now they are so distant and act so incredibly injured over this. And I'm a profession in an associated area, and so is my wife. We can't even grasp the depths of this loss from a professional, let alone personal perspective. So include your kids in on these sorts of hurts and losses. That's my deepest regret as a parent. Edit. Thanks for all the comments. I mean that. Since it's just a couple of days until Charity's birthday, she would have been 16. So my wife and I are pretty sad right now, especially since we want to be responding to our kids, 19 and 21, away at college, criticism of our past neglect. But now they won't allow that to happen, which is frustrating. On Thursday, I'm going to have flowers delivered to my daughter that tell her I love her and that it's okay to be sad today. I don't know exactly what I'm sending my son, but I'll figure something out with a similar message. And my wife will get flowers and a lot of hugs. Part of what I've learned from this and some of your comments have helped me understand it more deeply. Love and loss go together. You can't separate them, no matter what. In my experience, the inability to keep a conversation light and positive. For example, if I received an A on a test, and I brought it up at the dinner table, within 5 minutes we would be having a tense discussion about some other class I should be doing better in, or it has turned negative on one of my siblings. Why the heck would I bother bringing something up if it's going to remind you of something you yell about regularly? In the same vein, the inability to withhold more important discussions for another time. My parents never considered planning a sit down with me for a serious discussion about something I'm doing wrong, or did wrong. Rather they'd spring it on me when I'm trapped in a car with them, or at the dinner table, or when I'm least expecting it, or simply need to be doing something else. Important discussions were simply interjected into everyday life, and it led to me having bad anxiety and the inability to just relax around my parents. This may actually be part of some larger complex I have about my parents not having healthy divisions between themselves and other individuals. Like they don't respect or acknowledge that their kids are fully separate people who think in different ways. If I was living in a way that disappointed my parents throughout my adult life, they would die young and allow it to take decades of their lives because they are so intertwined in other people's business. They would never think their adult children deserve the respect of like a coffee date or lunch. In order to discuss a big issue, it would just be spewed out at the wrong time. They have no emotional intelligence and are the most judgmental people I've ever met. Continuing to tickle your children after they ask you to stop. My dad and older brother would tickle me as a child to the point that I peed my pants, despite me begging them to stop. It started as young as I can remember and didn't stop until I was 10. I was laughing because it tickled, not because I liked it, and I meant it when I told them no, but they would keep going anyways. I now hate being tickled and have serious issues saying no when I'm uncomfortable and maintaining my own physical boundaries. Teach your children their language is powerful. When they say no, even if it's playful, listen to them. It's always things that are a lot more subtle than you think that can have unexpected and lasting effects. For me, as a child I was always ahead of my class and my parents always praised my high marks. I never studied to get them. I was able to do it naturally without effort in primary school and a lot of high school. It wasn't until the end of high school and the start of university that I started to see the effects it had on me. I never learned to study properly and never learned how to properly put effort into something to get results. This started to affect my grades, and the straight A's I used to get were dropping to C's and D's. I had to teach myself to study properly to get back to B's. It also made me the bad kind of perfectionist. If I couldn't do something perfectly and get praise for it, why even bother trying at all? That's been the biggest struggle for me all through my life. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.